Good evening, and welcome to the Film Club podcast.
Mr. Hitchcock.
No, it's just me.
Oh, wow. Hi.
Hi, hello, and welcome to the Film Club podcast.
I'm Dean.
I'm Boo.
And we are the movie couple that talks about movies.
And this week we're talking about Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Not the director, not any of his films.
The movie about the man.
Yes.
The myth. The legend. Consensus number one filmmaker of all time? I think that's been the consensus. A lot of great directors list, he's in like the top 5 or he's number 1.
Yeah.
Which I think is earned. He's a guy that has like a long history of being a great director, and I think almost all of his movies were either critical or financial success stories.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so we're talking about Hitchcock 2012, starring Anthony Hopkins, Helen Mirren. Mirren. I've called her Miriam, and I misspell her name all the time to Miriam.
I know, all day today you've been saying Miriam or Miriam, and I'm like, I'll say it like lowly, I'm like, Mirren, and you're like, yeah, Miriam, and I'm just like all right.
The really good British actress.
Yes.
You know, the old one. Not that one, the other one. The one that played the Queen. Not that one you're thinking of, the other one that played the Queen.
Are you okay?
Yeah, no, it's just Helen Mirren is like the definition of very classy British actress.
Also, it's Dame Helen Mirren.
Dame Helen Mirren.
Yes.
And Sir Anthony Hopkins. Yes. But yeah, so talking about Hitchcock.
And it's Newvember, so this is a brand new movie for both of us.
Yes, it's the movie that finishes off Newvember.
Yeah.
And this was your pick.
It was my pick, and it was a fun watch.
Yeah, it was a fun watch. We both kind of had a feeling afterwards, like there was something missing out of it, but we can both agree it was a good movie.
Yeah.
It just didn't floor us.
I don't know what I was expecting.
What did you think it was going to be when you went in? Because new movie, never seen it before.
Yeah.
You know, what were you thinking going in?
Picked the movie because this is a movie I've been wanting to see. It came out in 2012, a couple years after I graduated high school. Didn't really have anyone to go watch this with, because a lot of my friends weren't into, like, classic films and, like, directors. So it's taken me all this time to finally see this movie.
I'm glad I'm here for you.
Thank
you. It took a decade, but we made it.
We made it, yes. But I thought, perfect movie to end this month with, and love Psycho. So any reason I get to see the makings and the behind the scenes of the movie, I'll take it.
Ah, I see. So this was more, you just wanted more Psycho info.
Oh, absolutely. Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember this film when it came out in 2012, but I remember it as, it's Anthony Hopkins and Helen Mirren trying to, win another Oscar. I vaguely remember it coming out, but I think this had a super small release.
Yeah, I remember the advertisement, the classic, poster.
The poster with
the red
the
poster.
knife.
Yeah, it's like that I remember, but I don't remember too much advertisement. I have the DVD to the movie now, and there's no bonus features on it, the making of the movie, so it's kind of like...
This feels like I don't want to be mean, but it feels like, this is like a really well-made HBO made-for-TV movie that got a studio-level production behind it. Because there's no special there's no, like, behind-the-scenes stuff on it. It's the director's first narrative film. He did documentaries before this. It seems like Anthony Hopkins and Helen Mirren came onto this because they were like, this is like a drama film that we can inhabit some real-life characters and make a run for an Oscar nod, but this was a stacked fucking year, so that didn't happen.
Well, apart from that, I feel like whoever did the casting for this movie was phenomenal, because, but they were really able to pin down characters that were really similar to the actual people.
Oh, I just want to make a note, the actor who plays, Anthony Perkins. Oh god, what's his name?
James D'Arcy?
Yeah.
D'Arcy?
James D'Arcy.
Yeah.
He was like striking. It looked exactly like Anthony Perkins. It was kind of weird.
Because you could put an actor in an iconic costume and you could see some of the similarities, but this man looked like Anthony Perkins.
Yeah, it was really weird. And I mean, you have Anthony Hopkins playing Hitchcock.
Yeah.
And he's doing a good Hitchcock impression. but like, you know, the special effects makeup on his face, where you give him the
jowl.
Hitchcock jowls, which in some scenes are better than others.
Yeah, but I think,
You know?
Sir Anthony Hopkins really kind of nailed the character. He had the voice down.
He had a lot of the weird little mannerisms down. It didn't feel like a good party trick. It felt like a real performance.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, this movie is stolen by Helen Mirren.
Oh yeah, Helen Mirren takes the cake in this movie. This is her movie, and I mean, I think it's smart because she's portraying the woman behind the man, just like his wife Alma did in real life, and I kind of like that the filmmakers wanted to give her the spotlight and show just how important she was to his career.
Yeah, but that's the thing with the movie that I feel it is its major flaw, and we talked about this where we don't think there's any one reason why the movie doesn't work. It's a lot of very tiny ones.
I mean, I think the movie works. It's just it's missing something.
It feels bland. It's a thing where it's like, man, this is a great steak, but it's definitely a grocery store steak. It's not a gourmet steak. It's fine. But here's the thing. The movie, I think, at its heart, is trying to be a biopic, a story of Alfred Hitchcock in a very specific moment, him creating his final masterpiece, we'll say, Psycho, his last great film.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go deep enough into the actual production of Psycho to make it a behind-the-scenes movie in the truest sense. It doesn't dive deep enough into Hitchcock as a man for us to understand more beyond the mythos and legend, and it doesn't do enough to expand on his mythology in a way where it's like, oh, yeah, he wasn't just great, he was amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like if they focused completely on Alma, that's a more interesting movie.
Yeah, and to show how difficult it was in Hollywood to, for a woman to have a career, like Hitchcock's, where you could be a director and you could be the one, calling the shots and having all the knowledge that she had.
Well, for it basically being laid out in the movie that, oh yeah, no, Hitchcock was a great director, but half the fucking work was her.
Yeah, and
she did all those story edits, she did all the rewrites.
And she even said, when they met, she was his boss.
Yeah.
And it's just this thing, where the man kind of, rose to the occasion and, he's the one that took the reins, and she was still kind of like, I got all this, but I guess I can work with you.
Yeah, and it's just a thing where I feel that's where the movie has a fatal flaw, because we mentioned it. There's a lot of drama manufactured for the movie to make it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a thing where
affair.
the will they, won't they, is this actually an affair, or is it really just a writer's writer's retreat, and it's Hitchcock being so paranoid about it? But it's like, in real life, they were, like, I don't think there was ever an affair on either side of that marriage.
No, I think what I read somewhere was that they were friends, Alma and, what was his name?
Whitfield Cook.
Whitfield Cook.
Played by Danny Huston.
Who was Marlowe from 30 Days a Night.
Yes.
Another great movie.
I like 30 Days a Night. That's actually a pretty decent one.
Yeah, that's a fun movie.
Yeah.
But
the sequel sucks.
Oh, yeah, I refuse to watch a sequel.
It is so god-awful. Oh my god.
It's another one of these things where it's like, if the first movie's perfection, why? It's like,
well, the first movie's not perfect, but it's a really, really good, like, horror movie. And, like, I know they wanted to make sequels because there's, like, a bunch of comic books and shit, but the problem with the sequels, they couldn't even get Josh Hartnett back for the one scene cameo at the end.
No, because, I mean, it's perfect the way it ended.
Yeah, no, it was a really good movie. But back to this.
Yeah, so they had a friendship, and I guess for the movie, they just really kind of embellished that to add drama to the storyline and to, kind of push Hitchcock over the edge with, I'm doing this movie about psychosis, and my wife, she's doing this to me, now I'm starting to lose it.
Yeah, but in the movie, he never really loses it in the way you want it to happen.
No, and I mean, you never want him to lose it, period, because, Alma and Hitchcock, they were very much in love, and, I mean, they were together all the way till they died, so...
Yeah, like, what, 50, 60 years they were married? It was something, like, ridiculously long.
Yeah, from working together, marriage, it's like, yeah, these two were couples goals.
Yeah, well, the thing is where's the drama, though? Like, what's the driving point of the story? Because if it was like, oh, the whole movie is showing you how they actually constructed Psycho as this thing that was, for the most part, a cheap B movie that Hitchcock said, I can make a B movie into a piece of art.
Into a phenomenon,
yeah. But that's not what it is. Like, we're barely on set for Psycho at all. Not, like, we don't really give that much, lip service to it at all.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a writing thing where they thought that, the drama with the studio, with Paramount not wanting to do this movie, would be strong enough to hold the audience.
It's not.
But it's just like, I was like, I don't know how this, will they, won't they affair thing takes that.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you thought this was going to be more like a suspenseful kind of thrillery thing.
Yeah.
And it feels like, no, the movie just needs to have something more dramatic as its central core, because the movie's in like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's just not enough drama to make this a complete story that holds you the whole time. Like, I felt like near the end of the movie, when Alma and Hitchcock are on the same page, that was like the best part of the movie.
Yeah, once they finally kind of get through this boulder that's basically, sitting in the middle of their relationship, it's kind of like, you know what, we're back to the old days where we're just making movies and we're having a good time. We're a team. It's like, I love that.
Yeah.
It's like, I would have loved to have seen more of them just on the same page, having a good time, showing her come to set when he's sick and be like, are we paying you here to, sit around and hang out? Get to work.
Yeah.
And this woman, oh, hey, you've got that lens on that camera. We don't shoot that way. Change it. And it's just like, Alma knows what's up.
Yeah, because I think that's a thing that's missing from the movie, is I wanted to see how they got to this point.
Yeah.
Because, again, they had made movies forever. I think Hitchcock made over 50 films in his lifetime, and Psycho was in the last 10.
Yeah, and I mean, there were movies that he made in the UK, so there was,
He made a bunch in Germany.
So it's, there's a ton of history, and I get that this movie is about the making of Psycho, but I think the general consensus for the two of us was we would have liked more flashbacks, kind of like in Gods and Monsters.
Yeah, where it dives into, okay, I understand Hitchcock is, master of suspense, he's this, mythological cinematic figure, but could you, just humanize him more? Like, why was he so particular? Why did he have all these weird eccentricities? What is up with the blondes? You know, because that's the biggest thing about Hitchcock, and I feel that's why so many people hold him up as, oh, he's the greatest director of all time, is because he's the director that has the most content of study. There's a whole 50-hour interview book, Hitchcock Truffaut, that is just Francois Truffaut doing an interview with Hitchcock for over the course of 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because, Hitchcock had a clear mindset and he was very particular and he knew exactly what he wanted. He storyboarded every single film to a T. There's nothing in a single Hitchcock movie that he didn't want there.
Down to the clothes, undergarments.
Yep.
The man, had his hand in every little detail.
And I'd be so interested to see, why was he like that? And it would probably be the same thing if somebody made a Kubrick biopic. Yeah. It would be Kubrick sitting in his office for 45 minutes, throwing books against the wall until he's like, oh, yeah, no, we'll make The Shining. And then he just tortures Shelley Duvall for the last hour of the movie. That, it probably wouldn't be that interesting, but I'd want to know more about, well, how did he grow up? Did he grow up poor?
It was like, I watched a documentary about the making of Psycho, and this was, I don't know how old this documentary was, but I mean, Janet Leigh was still alive. A lot of people that helped make the film were still alive. And his daughter, she was in the documentary, and she talked about the scene where Marion's being followed by the police, and how, Hitchcock loved to add things that scared him. So he had a phobia of the police.
Yeah.
I guess.
Like many people.
Many people, yes. But something in his childhood, happened with, he ended up being taken to a police station because he got in trouble. And she was kind of like, I feel like my dad embellished that story of, him going to the police station and being thrown in a cell to teach him a lesson. But it's like, we could have seen stuff like that, stuff from his childhood, his past, these things that are haunting him, and let's use it in a movie to kind of cope a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean that's the Gods and Monsters playbook.
Or him, donning his iconic black suit and black tie.
Yeah, I feel the movie would be more interesting if we just got more of Hitchcock as a human being, like, because that's the game plan of most biopics.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to humanize mythological figures, like Walk the Line and Ray did for Johnny Cash and Ray Charles, who were mythological musical figures, the most popular.
Even Elvis, the new film that came out last year.
Yeah, but I haven't seen that movie. I don't know too much about what the movie actually is going on, because apparently it's not that much about Elvis. It's about the guy that was his manager and built him up. But that's another thing. Like, it's a movie about Elvis, but it's not about Elvis. It's about the mystique. How did this mythology get built?
Exactly. And I've seen the movie, and I love Baz Luhrmann films, and it feels very much like a Baz Luhrmann movie. Mm-hmm. But also, we're seeing, what is his name? Colonel Ray Parker?
Yeah, it's the Colonel. He was the guy that saw Elvis and was like, I can make some money off of that boy.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see, through this fantastical world that Baz gives you, to see kind of, how this guy found this talented man and was like, okay, I'm basically going to make you my puppet, and I'm going to reap in everything that you're getting. And just seeing, the struggles in his life and how he kind of had his hand in it. So it's interesting to see the inner workings behind these mythological superstars that we have.
Yeah, and I think that's where this movie misses the mark, because it's not trying to humanize a myth. Mm-hmm. It's not trying to show how the myth became what it was. And it's not even examining a pivotal moment in a myth's life and seeing how that affected them. It's trying to do a lot at the same time. It's trying to do all three, but it doesn't succeed or go all the way with any of them.
I think they just needed to, expand a little bit more. It's like, if you wanted to make it The Making a Psycho...
Then just make it The Making a Psycho.
Well, they could have done The Making a Psycho, who he is as a man and how he's, come to this point in his life. I think they could have tied all those things together and just made the movie a little bit longer, so we kind of have more of a full story.
We would have more meat to chew on, because I think that's the thing. Because I don't want it to sound like, the movie's bad, I hate it. I liked the movie. Yeah. It was an enjoyable watch, and I was like, the performances of this are great. I like the production design. It really does feel like I'm watching Hitchcock kind of mold something into creation. But I was, at the end, I'm like, that's it? That's all we got out of it?
That's how I felt too. I loved the movie, but I was just like, it needs more. It's like when you go and you get a expensive meal at a nice restaurant, and they give you these tiny portions, and it's like, well, it was great.
You're the best steak I ever had, but I only ate it for 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's like, I'm still hungry. I want more. I want more details. I want to, learn more about who these people were without having to, go and buy a bunch of books and, kind of piece together their history and how this came to be. It's like, I want to see it all completed in one film.
Yeah, and also I think it's so annoying that they give the lip service to North by Northwest at the beginning of the movie, and then they're like, hey everybody, do you want a sequel? The Birds is coming right after this, guys.
No, I love that. I'm like, that is so Alfred Hitchcock Presents, that I was just like, that is the perfect way to end it. Just like with the opening of the movie, where it's Ed Gein in Wisconsin, and he, hits his brother in the head with the shovel, and I'm like, oh my god. And then, it pans over to Alfred Hitchcock, and since the beginning of time, it's been brother versus brother. I'm like, this is so Hitchcock.
It is Rod Serling. It is Twilight Zone.
Oh, I was so happy. I'm like, this is very much Hitchcock. But I was like, yeah, we need a little bit more meat on the bone.
Yeah, it's like, it's good. It's just, it's not great for me. But let's dive in a little bit deeper here, because I think we should actually tell people what the movie's about.
Yeah.
I mean, we basically told people what the movie's about.
I mean, we're just about maybe 30 minutes in, and we still haven't told everybody
the actual plot synopsis.
Yeah.
I'll give everybody a pretty brief one, because we kind of explained it, but here it is. So in 1959, Sir Alfred Hitchcock, played by Sir Anthony Hopkins, and his wife Alma, played by Dame Helen Mirren, are at the top of their career, are at the top of their creative game as filmmakers amidst disquieting insinuations about it being time to retire. To recapture his youth's artistic daring, Sir Alfred decides his next movie will adapt the lurid horror novel Psycho. Over everyone's misgivings, unfortunately, as Sir Alfred self-finances and labors on this movie, Alma finally loses her patience with his roaming eye and controlling habits with actresses, and when ambitious friends lure her to a collaboration on a work of their own, the resulting marital tensions threaten to bring Hitchcock's work to a crumble.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of fancy words on the back of this fucking box.
There is.
And come on, English ain't my first language. But it is a thing where, oh, he's making a Psycho, but to add drama, there's a marital spat.
Yeah.
And that's the movie. And the marital spat feels fine.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because that's life. You know, they've been married for so many years by this point to when they're making Psycho that, yeah, you would expect they're going to have issues in their marriage, and it's just kind of interesting to see how it spills out into the story with, you know, okay, we're doing this project, and when I do my projects, they're everything to me. And she's kind of like, I get that, but I'm also your wife, and you need to kind of, you know, acknowledge that I exist.
Yeah, and the other thing is, because it makes a note that what the movie's actually about, it's this guy trying to recapture his creative vigor from his youth because he feels like he's being aged out of the top spot, right? But the thing is they're... I don't know if they're wrong about the point of the movie. Because, yeah, Hitchcock was aging out, right? Because at the time of Psycho, he was almost 70, I think. Let me check, because I know how... I have his thing up, so I know how old he was. He was born in 18... Okay, so he was like 60.
Yeah.
When Psycho came out. So it's like, okay, so he's like 60. He's gonna live for another like 20 years, but, you know, you look at his creative output after Psycho, and it's... Yeah, you can tell there's like a decline, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting to see, somebody's like, hey, Hitch, time to hang up the gloves, man. You had last fight, that's all you got. And then he makes the most successful film of his career. Right after.
I mean, I saw somewhere that years after Psycho, Alma actually suffered a stroke, and they were living like in San Francisco, and like this really, you know, in the woods kind of manor. And it was far away from, you know, the city, the town. Mm-hmm. So he kind of, you know, made a decision. He's like, you know what? I need to make sure that she's in the best care. So he moved his family back to Beverly Hills where they're local, you know, with doctors and everything. So I think probably by the end of his career, it was more, I got to focus on my wife, my family. So I think that's maybe why
his career slowed way down after.
And I mean, Alma was his partner, his film partner too. So if she wasn't in the best condition, it was probably... I'm not going to stress her to, you know, do these long hours and to help me, you know, push, you know, this film to be another masterpiece. So I think that's probably why, after a while, he kind of, you know, I'm going to walk away from this.
Yeah, and it's just so interesting to see his like, oeuvre, I guess.
Well, that's a good word.
See, I'm picking up on one.
You're over here complaining about the back of the box, and you break out oeuvre.
Exactly. But that's the thing, because he worked forever and ever and ever. And he dies in 1980, Alma dies in 82, and you look at his, like, actual filmography, and the guy was making, like, so many great movies throughout his career. Yeah. And it's fascinating to see how this movie decides we're only focusing on Psycho, which, again, I said it before, it's his last masterpiece, right? Birds is a good movie, but it doesn't stand up to Psycho. He never makes another movie as good as Psycho until he dies, basically. Yeah. But it's interesting we're doing this, but we don't show any of the other masterpieces, or we don't show his first American film, which is Sabbath.
Rebecca.
Is it Rebecca or Sabbath?
Rebecca's the first American film.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we're not looking at Rebecca, a movie that I would argue is as critical as Psycho is in his career. Or we're not looking at Vertigo, the movie that everyone says, that is the most Hitchcock film to exist.
And it's also his love letter to San Francisco, because that was his and Alma's favorite place. They lived there, and he was like, I want to, you know...
encapsulate this in
I want to
cinema.
show my love for the city in this movie.
Yeah, or we're not going to look at North by Northwest, which has one of the wildest and weirdest productions that he's ever undertook. Like, the script was written in, like, 15 different acts and stages.
Or Rear Window, where it's just, these amazing sets that they build. You have Princess Grace of Monaco. You have Jimmy Stewart.
Or that's the other thing. Or Rear Window, which I would say is his best film. It's his best suspense film, right? And it's all these different films where I'm like, well, all of these are important and you landed on Psycho? Did you just land on Psycho because it's the one that's most popular, or the one you thought was the most critical of his oeuvre for you to examine to get the point of the man?
Yeah.
Is that why? Just because it was the most popular one?
No, I think because it was such a difficult project to get lifted. And the fact that, he was like, I'm gonna make it with my own money. There's no way you're stopping me. And I love the speech that he makes to Alma in the movie, because she's kind of like, you sure you don't want to shelve this for a little bit until, Paramount kind of gets off your back, and then they're like, okay, let's do what you want to do.
Make one more hit for them, and then you can make your own personal project.
Yeah, and, I love that he breaks down into, I miss the old days where we would kind of just put it all out on the line. We didn't have that much money or that much time, but we did it because we loved making movies.
That's something that Coppola made a point of, like, last year, was Francis Ford Coppola. He had, directed The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, and he made a comment after the whole, like, Scorsese thing, like, comic book movies aren't cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, comic book movies are, like, fine, but the problem is there's no risk in filmmaking anymore. Everything is so corporatized, everything is so produced, everything is so homogenized. We need risk in cinema. That makes good cinema.
What can we turn into a toy? What can we turn into a t-shirt, books?
Yeah, great cinema has risk. Like, what is Apocalypse Now? He was like, if Apocalypse Now failed, I would have literally been in the poorhouse no matter how good it came out.
Yeah.
If it didn't turn a profit, he was done. Godfather, they were like, we're putting our faith in you, and he had to fight tooth and nail for every creative decision in The Godfather.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a fascinating thing that even Hitchcock for Psycho was like, yeah, no, like to get that vigor back, to be like, make real cinema.
Make it kino.
Make it kino. He has to, like, put risk into it.
Yeah. And that's all great things. When you get that, just that, feeling in the pit of your stomach where I know I'm doing the right thing, I need to do this, and no one can believe you. It's you pushing through and being you have to persevere. And it's like, we see that with Psycho, where the studios were kind of like, people don't want to see a gory movie, they want to see a nice movie. And it's like,
which I want to make a note, Psycho is the least gory fucking slasher film of all time. I think Psycho has less blood than Halloween.
Yeah, and Halloween
has, like, none.
Hardly any blood in it.
Like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre famously had, 2 red Solo cups worth of blood for the entire film? Yeah. I still think that beats out Psycho.
But it was interesting in this movie that they show the offices that do, like, the ratings and the...
Oh, the MPAA.
There you go.
Yeah. Back in the day, because this was still... We were still under a pretty tight ratings board.
Very.
Because the rating board doesn't loosen up, I think, until, like, 64 or 67, something like that. A few years after this.
Yeah.
Because by the time, like, Bonnie and Clyde and The Graduate and all that stuff comes out, the rating board had laxed enough for them to make more, like, transgressive and cinema stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which also is another weird thing. Alfred Hitchcock's career spans from before the Hays Code to after the Hays Code to the introduction of, like, New Hollywood, where the code system was basically washed away for a decade.
Yeah.
And again, the other weird thing about Alfred Hitchcock is he doesn't seem like a filmmaker that could exist in a New Hollywood era.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when you think about it.
He's so steeped in, like, that classical tradition, and he's such a master of very old school cinematic language that I can't see him doing a fight scene all handheld and running in and out and following people around like in Mean Streets.
No.
He's
or even The Killing.
Yeah, like even The Killing, where I can't see I can't see Hitchcock doing what Kubrick was doing in like 56, where, oh, I'm gonna make this, again, another B picture noir film, but I'm gonna insert these weird documentary bits of it at the horse track. I can't see Hitchcock being like, yeah, we're gonna go on location and we're gonna, like, you know, really get down and dirty, because he hated location shooting.
Oh yeah, he detested it, so it's
and that was like half a fucking, that made New Hollywood so interesting, was it real location, real people, man.
Yeah, and that always seems like so much fun, you know, you get out of the studio and you get to be in this new place and turn it into whatever you want to turn it into. And Hitchcock was like, no, I like being, and that goes also with his character of, I like everything that I can control and manipulate. I can control the lights, the air, the this, the that.
He strikes me as the stereotype that people give to Stanley Kubrick. Because people say, oh, Stanley Kubrick, he really wished his actors were just robots. He can wind them up and tell them to do whatever he wanted, and they would just do what he wanted right away. But you actually learn a lot about it. And no, Kubrick made his actors take a lot of takes because he wanted them to just experiment and explore, and he's just like, we're doing all these takes because I want you to just stop acting and just be
the character.
You just be a character. I like in Eyes Wide Shut, Tom Cruise hated the fact that Kubrick wanted him to just play yourself, just be you, and Tom Cruise is like, no, like give me a fucking character. He's like, no. You're just being you.
I'd like
just
to see a take where Tom just runs at the camera and the Tom Cruise kind of running that he does. He's like, I'm being me! I'm running!
Tom Cruise had he drove himself fucking crazy working with Kubrick. It's great. But with Hitchcock, he's actually that stereotype where he wants his actors to basically be mannequins and models and just be exactly what he wants them to be. I think he's famous as saying that he never said actors were cattle. He thought that was really demeaning. Yeah. He said you should treat your actors like cattle. and it's like, I get, okay.
And it's his dry humor too, where it's just like people assume like, oh my god, you know, he's being rude, and it's just like, no.
Let's be honest, he also wasn't really lying about his feelings about his actors, because he was controlling shit. Yeah. And that's one of those things that a lot of people who worked with him make note of, especially the women he worked with, was he was really demanding, he was really particular, he was kind of a, like, lecherous prick, but he was a great fucking director. Like, Tippi Hedren said she fucking hated the guy. He was a good director, but he was a fucking cunt to her the entire production of The Birds. Yeah.
And then you have Janet Leigh, who's kind of like,
he was so nice.
He was nice. That was, you know, such an experience to be able to work with him.
Has Janet Leigh ever said bad about the making of Psycho?
I don't think so. I think her portrayal in this movie is probably as close to history was of making this movie. I think, you know, he really treated her well and talked to her and told her, you know, okay, we're going to have to do this, this, and this in the movie. I want you to be as on board with the project and aware of the things that we're going to throw at you. And even with, you know, we're going to kill you off 30 minutes into this movie, we want you to know so you don't feel like, you know, you've been snubbed out and good day.
Yeah.
And she was, you know, very on board. She read the book before she even read the screenplay, and she was ready to go.
And also, I feel like Alfred Hitchcock, if he made a pass at Janet Leigh, Tony Curtis would have been so down to fight.
Yeah, Tony would have had something to say about that.
I love the stories about Tony Curtis, because everyone's like, oh, he was one of those guys who was like super, you know, he was totally gay, right? One of those gay leading men that just hit it the whole time. No, that guy was a horn dog. And he has some of the best, like, old Hollywood, like, stories, like him and Kubrick on Spartacus. All they talked about was, like, football, broads, and sandwiches.
It's always about sandwiches with you guys. You talk about ham sandwiches all the time.
Ham sandwiches are literally the bar which all sandwiches are measured by. Let's just agree on this. But the thing is I would imagine Alfred Hitchcock, if he made a pass at Janet Leigh, he probably would have gotten into a fistfight with Tony Curtis. I don't think he would have cared that Hitchcock was, like, borderline dead on his feet for the last 10 years of his life.
I mean, I think Cubanos are the best sandwich of all time, and they got ham in them.
See, that's a ham sandwich. It's just a different brand of ham sandwich. I'm telling you, boo.
Cubanos are an experience. But
that,
yeah,
again,
you know, there's no way that Tony would have, you know, let anybody make a pass at his wife.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing, because Hitchcock has a very notable, we'll say a very notable history of being kind of a lecherous jerk to his leading ladies, we'll say.
Not to Grace Kelly, though. He loved...
Apparently she was another one of those actresses that said, oh no, he was great to hang out with.
I mean, the home that I was talking about earlier that Hitchcock and his family moved from that was in San Francisco, apparently after Grace Kelly became Princess Grace Kelly, she would come from France with her family and vacation in their house over in San Francisco. So it was like they maintained a friendship after, she became a royal. So it's like, yeah, I can see it with some of maybe his leading ladies, but then there were others where it's like, no, we just clicked.
Yeah, because I know in this, I don't know how true it is in the movie that Vera Miles, who was in this, who was in Psycho and is portrayed in this movie Hitchcock, and her whole character is just to tell Janet Leigh, don't trust Hitchcock. He's always watching, and he's such an obnoxious cunt. And it's like in the movie, he's nothing but sweet to Scarlett Johansson. He's nothing but nice.
Yeah, and I loved seeing their relationship because it felt like a friendship. Yeah. Even though they had just, I don't know if it was a thing where, maybe they'd met in passing before. I think maybe Hitchcock and Janet Leigh had met before, and it was once...
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember from like all the stuff that I've read. But it seemed like they had a genuine friendship off the bat.
Well, I want to ask you this because, again, this is a biopic, and we've kind of meandered and talked about just Psycho for a minute, but I want to talk about, like, Hitchcock the movie for one moment.
Yeah.
And I want to ask, how much of the movie is bullshit, or more politely, how much of it is exaggerated or just made up for the screen?
Yeah, I that's why I watched the Psycho documentary, to kind of pick and see where I can get people that were actually there, so I could kind of, counterbalance it with the movie and see what was fiction and what was, nonfiction.
Yeah.
And the whole Vera Miles thing, that was true in a sense that she was the next person that he wanted to kind of like build up to the Grace Kelly level of acting.
He earmarked her as his muse, and she was going to be his next starlet, right?
Yeah, and I think it was the assistant director of Psycho that said, yeah, he'd gotten pissed when she became pregnant, and he was just like, what do you mean you're pregnant? I was, lifting you up to stardom, and, you want to stop and become a mom and a housewife, so that was true.
Okay.
An interesting thing, because Vera, what's her last name?
Miles.
Miles. I wanted to call her Miller. Vera Miles, I guess someone asked her when this movie came out, I guess she was still alive, but they asked her, hey, are you going to watch this movie? And she's like, absolutely not. So I was just kind of like, ooh.
Do you think there was some, like, catty, they just did not like each other vibes?
That's what I'm kind of interested in. Is it you're still pissed off about the things that have happened in the past? Or are you pissed off that Jessica Biel's portraying you? Because she doesn't really look like Vera Miles.
No, she makes a passing resemblance once she gets the hair on.
When she gets the hair on and the costume on, I'm like, okay. But I was just kind of like, is it a casting choice? You didn't like that? Or are you just kind of like, you know what?
I feel like she just didn't like Hitchcock and didn't like the movie.
Yeah.
Because I feel that's another thing that comes up in the movie, that I think her feelings towards Hitchcock are probably accurate, but I know, like, the whole, like, affair vibe thing, that wasn't very true to life.
Yeah, I mean...
a lot of the Anthony Perkins, like, granted, the actor playing Anthony Perkins is like, oh, looks exactly like him, he's doing a good portrayal, but a lot of, like, the Anthony Perkins being afraid that people are gonna find out he's, like, gay, I don't think that's totally accurate to real life. Because I think he was, like, married with kids at this point.
No, he wasn't. I don't think he was married at that point. I think he got married a little bit later.
It had to have been like a few years after this. It had to have been close.
I'm leaning more towards a decade, but I haven't done a lot of my research on Anthony Perkins' backstory. I know that he did get married and he did have kids, and there was those rumors going around that, he was gay, and, they were trying to, like, put him in these, like, rom-coms to kind of, prove, no, he's not,
the Rock Hudson plan.
Yeah, kind of. So, I mean, you have that going, so it's like they sprinkle little truths
to kind of smooth over the exaggerations.
Yeah, so it was just kind of like, okay, check that off my list, that really did happen. But an interesting thing about the Anthony Perkins character in this movie, this guy, what was his name? Jack or James?
I believe it was James Darcy. Darcy.
He actually
It
wasn't
has like a weird apostrophe in there. It fucking throws me off.
I know, me too. Apparently, he wasn't the first choice as Anthony Perkins.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's a dead ringer for Anthony Perkins in the makeup.
Oh, yeah, but you wouldn't believe who they chose and who was actually, I guess, signed on to do this, but had to.
Okay, I want to take a wild guess. Is it somebody who doesn't look anything like Anthony Perkins?
No, I think he could have made it work.
He could have made it work?
He could have made it work, but I don't know if he would have made it work as good as James Darcy.
Okay. What were they a movie star at the time?
Yes.
Did they... Oh, big movie star?
Yes.
A-lister?
Yeah, I think he'd be an A-lister.
Okay. Young guy?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah? Okay.
Should I give you like a really direct clue?
Give me a hint. What was the movie they made before this? Or what's a big movie they were in around this time?
The movie we saw on our first date.
No fucking way. Andrew Garfield?
Yes.
No fucking way.
Yeah, that's right. He was signed on to do this, but he had to drop out because he was in Death of a Salesman on Broadway. And his practice schedule and, once the show took stage, he couldn't be part of the film.
Also, I bought Death of a Salesman the other day, like the book, because I've never read it. I have no idea what it's about.
Oh, it's a good book.
Yeah, I bought it, and I was like, I'm going to read it after I'm done reading my other stack of books, because I love The Lord of the Rings, and I'm reading through it right now, and I'm taking all my sweet fucking time on Return of the King. But I need to finish that, because I have like 15 books I gotta read. But I could see Andrew Garfield doing this.
Yeah, he has that, kind of shy boy next door kind of look.
And Anthony Perkins' whole persona was built on having that, he's just the nice boy next door. He looked like he was
He's the kind
17.
of boy that runs the motel and, tragically lost his mother and father.
Yeah, he's a guy that even as a grown man looked like he was 17 until he was like 30-something.
Yeah.
And also, speaking of somebody who looked like they were 17 until they're like 40-something, Ralph Macchio's in this.
Yeah, that kind of threw me when he's,
Joseph Stefano. Also, he's another guy that's like a dead ringer for Joseph Stefano. Ralph Macchio is a dead ringer for the guy.
That's why this movie, whoever did the casting, bravo, because all of the people on here were just...
Or like dead ringers.
Even knocked it out of the park.
Even Scarlett Johansson, who doesn't really look all that much like Janet Leigh, because Janet Leigh had like a very specific looking face.
I mean, they're both beautiful women, but they both look very iconic in their own ways.
Well, they look different. But Scarlett Johansson looks like one of those like classic Hollywood starlets, just how her face looks.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can see that, and like, granted, Helen Mirren doesn't look anything like Alma does.
No, but I mean, it's Helen Mirren, so it's like, Helen Mirren you're gonna, be invested in the character that Helen Mirren gives you, because she is just that strong an actress. But Scarlett Johansson, I mean, you put her in the makeup and the hair, and she is just, a phenomenal actress in her own, that, you believe that she's Janet Leigh.
Yeah, no, her performance is great. I think it's one of those things, because this movie, its one nomination was in its makeup effects.
Yeah.
Like makeup and hair and all that stuff. And with Hopkins, I can see it. They transformed a very, like, svelte Anthony Hopkins, because he was coming off of playing Odin, so he decided to get a little cut up. Yeah. And now he's playing this fucking ginormous dude with the jowls. So there's a lot of makeup on him, with, like, Jessica Biel playing Vera Miles. Like, oh no, she's a dead ringer for him. The guy, like James Darcy, dead ringer for Anthony Perkins. It feels like there's not a whole lot of makeup on them, but the amount is on it makes them look exactly like the characters.
Yeah, because when I first saw the movie, I saw Jessica Biel, and I'm like, well, that's Jessica Biel. And obviously, I know who these actors are, and it's like, oh, well,
you saw Angel.
Yeah, it's like, I've seen, I know these people. But then it's like, you see...
Wait, was she on Angel? What was the fucking show she was on?
She was in Seventh Heaven.
Seventh Heaven, okay. Who the fuck was on Angel?
A lot of people?
I know it was a lot of people. Because I remember Jessica Biel from, like, 13 Ghosts, and, like...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, there was another, like fucking shitty movie she was in. Wait, no, because she was the lead in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake, right?
The remake, yeah.
Okay, I think those are the only two Jessica Biel movies I've seen other than this.
She was in a lot of 2000s movies.
She was in, like, fucking everything, and then I think she disappeared for, like, I don't know, the last couple of years. I haven't seen her in anything.
No, she's done stuff. She just did a whole thing on Hulu last year about a female serial killer.
That's the thing, because I don't have Hulu.
I guess.
Yeah.
But it was just a thing, you know, where I saw her and I'm like, oh, well, that's Jessica Biel. And then we see her in costume as Marion's sister, and I'm like, oh my god, you've really turned into Vera Miles. And I'm like, no wonder, you know, this movie was nominated for an Oscar and, you know, in hair, effects, makeup, because they were really able to bring these actors back to life in their new, you know, with these new actors that are portraying them.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, the movie has some things in it that it excels at.
Mm-hmm.
The casting is great. The performances are so good. Everyone in here is giving their fucking best go. It's just, like, I feel like the script's not fully formed, and that's what's holding it back from being, like, a great movie.
You know, we're missing one character in here that both kind of tripped us out a little bit when we saw them.
Ooh, was it Danny Houston?
No, Ed Gein.
Oh, okay, yeah. The guy playing Ed Gein, Michael Wincott, I swear to God, I had to look up pictures of actual Ed Gein, and it is fucking creepy.
Yeah.
I don't know how much... That's probably the actual thing that got them, like, an effects, makeups, whatever Oscar, because the guy is so, like, dead ringer Ed Gein. It's creepy.
Scary. It was just like, you've brought this serial killer back to life, and you basically have him influencing Hitchcock.
Yeah. Also, those were, like, the goofiest scenes. I know you like those scenes, and I was like, these are so fucking goofy.
I thought you would have been on my side of this, or we would have been, you know, flipped where you loved it, and I was kind of like, really? But I loved that, you know, just his descent into madness is, you know, Ed Gein kind of whispering into his ear, and like...
I think that's my issue, is Hitchcock's having this descent into madness, and he's being ferried there by Ed Gein, his imaginary friend, and I'm like, that doesn't seem real at all. I feel like it's a thing where it's when that surrealist, like, introspection is rubbing against, like, a true-to-life, like, biopic, and it's like, some movies can do that. I think Rocket Man did that pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
Because Rocket Man's like, if you watch it, yeah, it's a biopic, all this stuff is happening, but it's complete fantasy. Which is, and like, it
works.
It does work, because it's like, oh, we understand, we're trying to show you the fantasy of Elton John and his rise to prominence through the emotion that's going on through him.
Also his imagination, too.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, it's like, he can give you the music, you can experience it, you can listen to it, but this is kind of like looking through his eyes and how he sees the world, and it's just...
How he feels, because when he played at, what was that music place in LA, when he was like, oh, when I was playing, it felt like everyone was floating, and in the movie, everyone's floating.
What was it, Whiskey A Go-Go?
I think it was Whiskey A Go-Go, and that's the thing, in Rocket Man, it works because, oh, it's the story like if Elton John told you, where it's really fantastical, and it's kind of disjointed, but it works. But in this, it's like, the movie's not set up like that. It's like, half the time, it's like, oh, we are a very serious, real drama about the greatest director of all time. It is an imaginary friend, Mr. Ed Gein. How's it going, Ed? I'm doing all right there, Mr. Hitchcock. Let's go and make some food.
Because, I mean, those scenes, they just completely take you off guard. And it's just, you know, because, you know, we're on set, and then suddenly we're in Ed Gein's house, and he's, you know, dragging... I'm assuming Mary up the stairs to behead her in the tub. And it's just like, oh my god, you know, this movie just went really dark really fast.
Yeah, and I think that's a tonal inconsistency with the movie, because it doesn't feel like that doesn't fit with what the movie's actually doing.
But it kind of works with the psycho aspect where, you know, we all go a little mad sometimes. And I feel like this is Hitch going mad, and, you know, Ed Gein being like, hey, you know, you're kind of missing these major clues that your wife's kind of leaving, you know, go look in the bathroom, there's some sand, and that's how he figures out, you know, it's like, really, this writer's retreat means you're at the beach?
Like, I get that, where what Ed Gein is Hitchcock's own paranoia of his wife, like, potentially having an affair or leaving him or something like that, but in the actual, I guess, workings of the movie, it's like, I don't think you need Ed Gein there. I feel like it'd be more compelling if we just see Anthony Hopkins just acting his ass off and showing, oh, you're this guy whose entire life is about control, and you're being confronted by the one person you cannot control. And I think that's what the movie is really about, is this control freak being unable to control the one person closest to him.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like, the movie's still okay. It's not, I liked it. It was okay.
I really liked it. I think there could have been more to it, but for what it is, I really enjoyed it. I mean, any time that I get to see
Hitchcock,
Hollywood landmarks.
You love these behind the scenes
yes.
kind of movies. You love these old Hollywood love letter movies.
If I could work on a film set, if that was my career, just being on set, absolutely, I'd be happy.
But yeah, that was Hitchcock. Final thoughts on Hitchcock. What did you think about it?
I really enjoyed it. I thought all the actors in this movie put out a great performance. We didn't talk too much about Scarlett Johansson, but I think she did a phenomenal job.
We talked a lot about Scarlett Johansson. You just don't remember.
Not too much, but
yeah,
I think
a bit.
But she did a phenomenal job as Janet Leigh and as Marion Crane. But 2 strong thumbs up for me if you love old Hollywood, if you love Psycho, behind the scenes kind of films. Perfect.
I really think that's a right way to put it. If you love old Hollywood, if you love old films, if you're really into these biopics of this classical era, this is right up your alley. I liked it. I think the performances are great. I think Helen Mirren's the standout here.
Oh, absolutely.
Scarlett Johansson as Janet Leigh, very good. James Darcy as Anthony Perkins, very good. Michael Wincott as Ed Gein might be the second best performance in the movie.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins ain't no slouch in any movie
No.
I've seen him in. But I really liked it. I think I'd give the movie a 3 out of 5 in terms of overall thoughts. Maybe a 3.5. I might be a little wonky about it, but I would give it 2 thumbs up. Definitely give it a watch. Yeah. It's not a bad movie. No. I think anyone could enjoy it as just a fun biopic about one of history's best filmmakers
and one of history's greatest films.
But next week starts a new month. We're moving into December. Your month. It is my month, because we're doing something a little different this year. Dean had his birthday month, and next month is my birthday month. So yes. I'm going to follow in Dean's footsteps, and I'm going to be doing, a month dedicated to one of my favorite directors, which means we're not saying goodbye to Mr. Hitchcock just yet. Oh, really? Yes, next month is going to be about Hitchcock films, and more importantly, my favorite Hitchcock films. Ah, I see. So it'll be a fun month, and I think the best way to start off Hitchcock month for us is by doing the film that's my namesake, Rebecca. Really? Yeah. We're finally going to tell people your real name. Dun, dun, dun. Well, I mean, I tried to get it out there, but, you've just thrown this Boo character out there, so I've kind of had to take it. Look, you said you're I don't want people to, know my real name. That might be kind of weird. And so I just Boo, that's a nickname I give you. That's fine. Well, no, I mean, it's you're you on this, and I'm like, well, why can't I be me? And you're like, no, it's Dean and Boo. And I'm like, okay, I guess I no longer cease to exist. I'm just this character now. Exactly, now. You think Dean's my real name? Huh. But yes, next week we'll be talking about Rebecca, which is Alfred Hitchcock's first American film. Yeah, I've never seen it. I know it's based on a novel. It is. I think Laurence Olivier's in it. Correct. Yeah, I know a lot about it, but I've never actually seen the movie. I'm very interested. It is his first American film, right? It's his very first American film, and it won 2 Oscars, I believe. Okay. So I think these are his only Oscars that one of his films has won. I'm very excited, to be honest, because I don't watch a lot of old Hitchcock stuff. My Hitchcock is very much in that late 40s, 50s. Technicolor Hitchcock is my bread and butter. So black and white, old school Hitchcock, I'm kind of into. With Sir Laurence Olivier. I like Olivier. I really liked him in a lot of movies I've seen him in. I think he's the best part of Spartacus by far. But that'll be next week. Yeah, that'll be next week. And if you want to listen to us on a different platform than you are right now, you can find us on Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can go to our YouTube channel, The Film Vault. That is The Film Vault on YouTube, where every week we try and upload a new video of this podcast. But if you wanted to follow us on social media, where can they go? You can find us on Instagram at The Film Club Podcast, where we post daily stories, trivia, upcoming episodes, and just our wild adventures that we go on. And with that, we'll see you next week at The Film Club. Good evening.
movie.